A new book seeks to change how people view the American South and thus the country's history as a whole. Jeffrey Brown spoke to author Imani Perry, who traveled the South and explored the complexities and misperceptions along the way. It's part of our ongoing series of Race Matters, as well as our arts and culture series, Canvas.
It's sort of like trying to get to the root and help readers from all over the place understand that it's the root.
The root of the country for Imani Perry is the South. And even on a recent walk in New York, she saw connections everywhere.
So Harlem is filled with Southern culture. Wall Street, right, is dependent upon the history of the U.S. slave trade.
Perry's new book takes us on trips she made all over the region below the Mason-Dixon line, from Maryland to Mississippi, and takes on what she sees as a misperception of the South's continuing role in who we are today. It's called South to America.
The South is really not only where the idea begins, right, of what this nation would become, but it also has moved the country about because it was the bounty of the South that allowed for the nation to become wealthy, to become a global power, and that it has continued to shape our tastes, our habits, our culture in ways that we often deny, in part because, it's done the dirty work of the nation in many ways.
Perry is a professor of African American Studies at Princeton, whose work explores race, law, and history, often through the lens of culture and cultural figures, such as the writer Lorraine Hansberry. Her last book, Breathe, was written as a letter to her two teenage sons on the perils of growing up Black in America. She describes her sense of mission this way.
I'm trying to figure out why we have this choreography, of 2 steps forward, 1 step back, or sometimes 3 steps back.
We meaning?
Americans, the United States. And so I want to use history, tradition, very particularly the history and tradition of African American art, intellectual life, civic culture, to think creatively about how to move towards freedom, notwithstanding the fact that retrenchment happens over and over and over again.
She was born, she says, 9 years after and a few miles from the site of the 1963 Birmingham church bombing that killed 4 young Black girls. Birmingham remains the place she calls home.
I always think, that's the place I learned to walk, talk, laugh, read, dance. And so there's a core part of me that I see as having created there.
At age 5, with her mother and her adoptive father, a white civil rights activist from the North, she moved to Cambridge, Massachusetts, returning south regularly to visit her close extended family. But for South to America, she did something different, visiting people and places she knew less well, to see the present interacting with the past.
Everywhere I went, and I expect this will always be the case to a certain extent, in the South, you feel history. I mean, you feel the ghosts of the past. Even when the Confederate monuments come down, it's still present. It's present in the way land is used, and it's present in the sort of quiet but collective memories of what happened in those places.
From her northern perspective, she saw a place people looked down on for its racism and backwardness, ignoring how the entire country's history, economy, and culture was shaped and implicated.
To say, well, that's down there, without acknowledging that that has actually what made the wealth and the prosperity for the entire nation, it's not just insincere, but it allows for a deep inconsistency between the truth of the nation and the way we narrate it, right? So
This is what you mean by saying that the South did the dirty work.
The South did the dirty work.
And everyone else could sort of look noble.
Yes. Our habit of being okay with people working hard and suffering or having very little, our habit of people being pushed out of their homes, there are ways of doing things in this country that I argue begin with the ways of that region. And so in order to fully understand what this place is and hopefully make it something closer to fair and just and kind to everybody who participates in it, I think we have to acknowledge that's us. It's not some other place. That's us.
At the same time, she says, that other South, the place where social justice movements began and so much is happening today, isn't celebrated enough. Her travels included Montgomery, Alabama, its profile changed by the work of the Equal Justice Initiative in fighting mass incarceration, including the powerful National Memorial for Peace and Justice. And she points to political and social change in Georgia and elsewhere, impacting the direction of the country. All of this, of course, continuing to be fought over.
People say, you know, how can you be someone who's hopeful about the future? And I say, easy, I'm from Birmingham, right? At that place could change, you know, known as Birmingham, known as the most racist, violent part of the South. Coming from that place, I have to have faith in the possibility of transformation. But the openings are still quite narrow for people to occupy different social positions. And retrenchment is so common, right? So that every movement forward has to be so jealously guarded, or else there can be, you know, almost immediate backsliding.
The book is South to America, Imani Perry. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Another way to think about the South and about the entire country.